Hello, my name is Tara Greatorex, and I'm going to be helping you go over your email today. Um, so, so here we have your original message to your professor. Hello, dearest professor. At first, I hope you had a nice winter vacation too, and my vacation was fantastic. Actually, I took a trip from Key West in Florida to Augusta, Maine along East Coastline. Although it was a little bit freezing on north parts of our ride, the view or the mood of places were really different depending on cities. And I'm really happy with your mail because it means you didn't forget us since break. Your mail makes me remember the excitements in your classes, but you give us many confidences as ESL students here in the US for a first time. Thanks a lot, JH. So it's a nice email overall, and there's just a few areas that I think we can look at to help you improve this message. So we'll look at each area separately, but we'll look at the whole email overall. The first thing is tone, and the next one is tense. We also have articles, count and non-count nouns, word choice, and conjunctions. So just to give you a little bit of an idea, the things in blue are things that I would recommend changing about your message. So the first thing that we're going to look at is the tone. So in the United States, when we speak with our professors, we want to keep a sort of semi-formal tone. It doesn't have to be super formal and academic, but it also doesn't want to be the same tone that you would use to talk to a friend. So if we look at the opening, my hello dearest professor, it seems a little bit too cozy. Dearest is more like what you would use for like someone that you love. So I would say something more like, hello, Dr. Butler, or dear Professor Greatorex. In the United States, we really like to use names, and you want your professor to know that you remember her name, so I would recommend starting off with like hello or just dear and then the name of your instructor. The next thing is the use of exclamation marks. I know I'm really guilty of this too. I love to use my exclamation points, but in formal writing, we want to try to tone those down a little bit. I would say, in my personal opinion, it's okay to keep maybe one for something that you're very excited about, but then try to take out the other ones. That's my rule of thumb. I'll go through after I've written an email, and if I see that I have 5 exclamation points, I take some of them out because it's a little bit too much. For your friends, it's fine. For an instructor, not so much. And then the closing, just like with the opening, I would recommend using your full name instead of just your initials. And thanks a lot is okay, but it can sound a little bit sarcastic. So I have another recommendation for you, which would be something like, thank you so much, and then also add something like, and I look forward to seeing you soon in class if you're going to have this instructor again. Yeah, so all of these exclamation points here, East Coastline, cities, I would take those out and just make them a regular full stop. Okay, the next thing is tense. So at the start of your email, you say, at first I hoped you had a nice winter vacation. That makes it sound like you did want them to have a nice vacation, and then you change your mind and now you don't want them to have had a good vacation. So I would recommend using the present tense there, I hope. And I would also recommend changing this at first, because again, at first makes it sound like you had one opinion originally and then you later changed your mind. So I would just start off with like something like, to begin, I hope you had a nice vacation. Towards the end, you say that the email made you think that your instructor didn't forget us since the break. So since is a word that usually signals the present perfect tense, which if you remember is something that starts in the past and continues to now. So like, I've lived in Delaware since 2012, starting in 2012, continuing to now. So if you want to keep the word since, then you would have to change didn't forget to something like you haven't forgotten us, present perfect. The other option is to take out that since and to say that you didn't forget us over the break, which is now past. Either of those options are okay. Okay, so you can see some of those things that we would have changed already. The intro, the closing, those exclamation points, the tense in the first part, and the tense here about you didn't forget us. Okay, the next thing to improve would be articles. So remember, articles are words like a, an, and the. So every time we're talking about a specific place, like a specific identifiable place, we want to use the definite article the. So East Coastline, we want to say the East Coastline. And we don't need capital for that, and we're going to separate it because in this case it's not a proper noun, it's just you're describing the East Coastline near Maine and the other places that you visited. North parts, again, you're talking about north parts of your trip, so it would be the, and then in this case the word north describes the parts of your trip, so we want to make it an adjective instead of a noun, so the northern parts. First time, so first is a superlative, which means like the first, it's only one. And when there's only one, it's specific, it's identifiable. So we want to say the first time, the second time, the third time, the last time. One part you say of places, like the mood of places. Again, you're talking about specific places that you actually visited. So we want to say of the places that I visited. And then depending on cities, we also want to say depending on the city or the cities that you visited. If you're saying something is different depending on the city, we can keep it in singular because it's like one city, another city, different on the city. Okay. Another thing to look at is the count and non-count nouns. So remember that non-count nouns are things that we can't count with a number, so things like air and love. So excitement would definitely be a non-count noun. And when we have a noun that we can't count with a number, it means that we also don't use it in plural. Because if it's plural, it means it could be 2, 3, 4, but excitement we can't count. So that one we need to take off the S. Remember the excitement. And then confidence is the same way. It's like a feeling, so we want to use it in singular only. And then that also means we can't use many, because many means more than one. We can only use it for plural. So we can use a lot of confidence instead of many confidences. And then the last part, the view or mood of places were really different. So both view and mood here are singular. And since you're using or, like one or the other, we can't use were, which is plural. I would actually recommend changing this sentence because view, we can use in plural. Like the views were beautiful. So that if we put that in plural and make it the views, we can keep the were. And I would recommend changing mood to something more like atmosphere. Mood sounds more like a person who's like happy or sad. So if you could change it to the views or the atmosphere of the places were really different. Okay, another thing about word choice. So like I mentioned before in the beginning, at first sounds like you had one opinion and then you changed your opinion. So I would recommend changing at first to something like to begin with or to start with. Actually, I took a trip from Key West. Actually, it sounds a little bit like you think your professor thought you did something different, and then you're saying, well, actually, I did this trip. It just sounds a little bit awkward. I would say something like, in fact, because you're saying my trip was fantastic. In fact, I took a road trip from Key West. Yeah, so I would use in fact instead of actually. And one part where you say it's a little bit freezing. So freezing is a word that means very cold. Which means that we can't say a little bit very cold, right? It's like kind of a contradiction. Freezing is already an adjective that's like an extreme adjective, so we can't really tone it down. If it was a little bit cold, you can say a little bit cold, or if it was actually very cold, then take out a little bit and say freezing. And then the last thing for word choice there, you keep referring to your professor's mail. So if they sent you a letter, like an actual letter, then I would say letter. And if it's an email, we want to make sure it's email. Okay, so mail is just like a whole category of things, but we don't use it like a specific your mail, like your letter, your message, or your email. Okay, and then the last area to work on is conjunctions, which are those connecting words. In the first sentence where you're trying to connect several ideas here, and you had a nice winter vacation too, and my vacation was fantastic. I would actually separate these into two different sentences. Have the first sentence tell your professor that you're wishing her, that you're hoping that she had a great vacation, and then have a separate sentence that says, my vacation was fantastic. If you wanted to keep it as one sentence, we need another comma after two. The sentence that starts with, and I'm really happy with your mail, I would start that sentence with also instead of and. And it's not the sentence before this sentence isn't really continuing into the sentence. It's more like a separate idea that you want to add on. So and is more like a conjunction that you'd want to use in the middle of the sentence instead of at the beginning right here. So I would change that for also. And then the last conjunction here, your mail makes me remember the excitement, which remember we're changing that to email, makes me remember the excitement. But you give us many confidence. But it signals like a contrast. So it would make it seem like you giving us confidence is like the opposite or contrasting with the excitement of the classes. And I wouldn't see that as a contrast like that. I would see that as something that goes together. So I would change that but for and. That you remember the excitement and you remember that your instructor gave you confidence in your class. Like those are two things that can go together and are not contrasting with each other. Okay, so if we take a look at, this is just an option. Again, there's a lot of different options. There's different ways that you can change and improve this message, but this is an option of how we could have put into practice some of those things that we talked about. So remember tone, articles, conjunctions, word choice, and tense. So we have that intro, hello, Professor Butler, or whatever your professor's name is. To begin, I hope you also had a nice winter vacation. My break was fantastic. There's your one exclamation point that you get to keep. In fact, I took a trip from Key West in Florida to Augusta, Maine along the East Coast line. Although it was a little bit cold on the northern parts of our ride, the views and the atmosphere of the places I visited were really different depending on the city. We also changed the views and atmosphere so that we can keep that plural because it's both together, not one or the other. Also, I'm really happy with your email because it means you didn't forget us over the break. Your email makes me remember the excitement in your classes and that you give us a lot of confidence as ESL students here in the US for the first time. Thank you so much, and I look forward to seeing you in class soon. Best, and then sign your full name. Okay, I hope that helps. If you have any questions, feel free to let me know, and good luck next semester.